Enough blood. Is this enough blood? I feel like there should be more. What do you think, Cam? I ask. His face is buried in his phone again. He doesn't look up. Yeah, that's good. Do you mind finishing up without me? Tammy is waiting to... Well, you got this, right? Yeah, no problem. I sigh. Just leave the keys so I can lock up. Sure. See you tomorrow then? He shoves the keys at me, and he's out the door before I can respond. Now, I'm alone in Hollow Hills Haunted House. When we were kids, this place was such a thrill. I must have been stupid to think volunteering us to put on the haunted house this year would rekindle a flame that had died out before high school. I'd gone from his best friend to just a friend to just his neighbor. Now, I'm just a bother to him. It's a miracle he agreed to help at all. I glare at the zombie display I'd been toiling with. More blood, I decide, swallowing the lump in my throat. F you, Tammy. You're not going to ruin this for me. I walk outside to the barn where all of the decorations are stored, rummaging through a few boxes before finding the one I'm looking for. I toss my purse inside and carry everything toward the house. This place open? The voice startled me. The box falls to the ground as I whirl around. There's a man standing there in dark clothing. Something about him seems off. No, not until Halloween. I stammered, backing away. He looks at the box I've dropped. Need a hand? I'll just bring this inside. I don't wait for him to finish. I bolt. My instincts are proven correct as I hear him running after me. I slam the door, locking it behind me. A moment later, he crashes into the frame, pounding against it and yelling profanities. My heart drops as I hear my ringtone from outside. Shit. My purse. The keys are out there with my phone. Oh, please, don't let him find... The lock turns, and I freeze. The door opens, and a sinister grin greets me. I stumble away, shocked to feel strong arms closing around me. I glance back and scream. The mannequin I've dressed as an evil clown is holding me, shielding me. It swings a rubber knife that somehow slices through the man's sleeve. His eyes grow wide as he raises an arm that has turned to plastic. The clown slashes down again and again. In my peripherals, I see the other decorations moving towards him with arms outstretched and weapons raised. Wow, this looks great, Cam says, taking in the gruesome scene. How did you even come up with this? Sometimes these things just arrange themselves, I reply, gazing at the scattered mannequin limbs and shredded pieces of clothing. My eyes settle on the severed head the clown is holding. Definitely enough blood. Cam chuckles. Haunted house. It was Halloween night, and respectably, the biggest night of the year in this business. Bram was hesitant to let me play the part of the hacker, but after 3 weeks of watching from backstage, I was confident. Try not to mess it up tonight, kid, he said. I won't, I reassured him. I lifted the machete with an evil grin. Tonight, they will feel the wrath of the hacker. I bellowed, followed by my best evil laugh. Bram laughed and shook his head as if I were crazy. "And be careful," he exclaimed. "That thing is sharp." A few hours had passed, and so far, there have been a few good scares, but nothing worth talking about. Then I saw my chance. Cue the smoke. 3 teenage girls crept into the room. I could see them in the dim light, huddled together, just waiting to be scared. Nervous laughter surrounded them. I clicked the button, and in 3, 2, 1, simulated lightning. The 3 let out a fun shriek. I took a deep breath and sprang from around the corner. With every bit of vocal strength, I screamed. I hurt my throat, but it would be worth the sacrifice to see Bram's face. They yelled again, but their cries were quickly reduced by a third as I swung the machete. The first girl's head hit the floor with a most satisfying thud. The other 2 turned and ran for the door as I crept closer. Their cries for help, music to my ears. I picked up the first girl's head by the hair and gave her a subtle smile, fresh terror still on her face. Turning both mine and severed head to face them, I asked, "Who's next?" Bram released the latch, and the 2 girls went screaming out the side door. "Wow," Bram said. "Great job, kid." "Thanks. It was harder than I thought it'd be to get it all the way through the neck, but came out pretty well." "Yes, you should see when it doesn't go well. Not a pretty sight." He laughed. "According to our permits, we've got a few kills left. Want another?" I couldn't believe it. He was offering me a second kill. "Hell yeah, I do." "Great. What do you want next?" he asked. I have Chainsaw Man or Guy with Acid. Up for grabs. The running game. I had a wonderful childhood. For a good portion of it, I lived with my brother and father in the Adirondack region of New York. It was a beautiful area. Since we lived in a very rural part of town, we had no neighbors. Instead, we had dense forests. Every Saturday afternoon, we would take a hike through said forests. I felt as if I were in a place like the 100-Acre Wood or the Wildwood. My favorite time of the year was autumn. The leaves changed color and the air began to crisp. It's a beautiful time of year. Even more so where I lived. This season meant a lot of things for me. It meant back to school. Like most kids, me and my brother were pissed off about summer ending. However, we were delighted to see who our classmates and teachers would be. It also meant pumpkin pie. My dad would often buy a pumpkin pie from the nearest bakery. Even to this day, I swear that particular bakery made the best pie ever. Autumn also meant something very important to me: Halloween. Me and my brother always looked forward to Halloween. Our father would take us to pop-up stores and buy our costumes. I would always get one of the ready-made costumes, while my brother would end up making his own. The particular store we went to always had a life-size skeleton butler standing by the entrance. Funny how we used to be so afraid of it, considering how goofy it looks in hindsight. Of course, the actual day of Halloween was a lot of fun. First, we'd watch a scary movie before trick-or-treating. The only reason my father let us do this first was because he didn't want us to stay up later than we probably would have anyway. The movie itself was never too scary. It was usually Pooh's Grand Adventure or The Wizard of Oz. Like I mentioned earlier, we didn't have any neighbors, so our father would drive us to the main part of town, which had more houses. We trick-or-treated until the sun was just starting to disappear below the horizon. By the time we got back home, it would be pretty dark. As we pulled into the driveway, our father would play a little game with us. It was called the running game. What we had to do was run from the car to our bedroom as quick as possible. It was a simple thing, but we loved it. We often raced each other. It was fun running at full speed in our costumes. One of us would easily slip as soon as we entered the house and knock something over. Our father didn't care. It was Halloween. In our room, me and my brother would stay up as late as possible, eating our candy and telling spooky stories. It was fun eating candy in bed. We didn't even need to brush our teeth. There was something about Halloween candy that was so delicious. We even heard our father crying downstairs because he didn't get any. When I was 13, we moved down to New York City. It was a big culture shock for us. We had to get used to many neighbors, loud noises, and smaller spaces. It was also difficult to have to get used to an entirely new school district with new teachers and students. Fortunately, I made new friends quickly. I now live in an apartment on Long Island. My brother still lives in the city. He ended up liking it better than rural life. Our father also still lives there too. Yesterday, we decided to give him a visit. We had a grand time reminiscing about old times. That is, until I brought up the running game. Father gave me a weird look. You know, that game we played on Halloween? The one where we ran inside as fast as we could? Remember? I asked him. He immediately began to break down. We comforted him until he felt well enough to talk. He explained that there never really was a game. There was a reason he wanted us to run. He'd always see something in the rearview mirror. Every year, it would come back. He didn't want it to, but it would. Concerned for our safety, he'd make sure we made it to the safety of our bedroom, disguising it as a game. My brother asked our father what exactly it was. He began to break down again as he said, "Something horrible." I passed him a tissue. I knew it was Halloween, but it wasn't a person in a costume. I know it. It was a monster. Me and my brother didn't know what to think of this. We never saw Father in this state before. He continued, "I felt like crying just looking at it. It was that awful. In fact, I did cry after you two went to bed. I'm sorry. I was that afraid of it finding a way inside. I hoped it never would come back again, but it did. Every fucking Halloween it did." My father then took a minute to calm down. "Why didn't you tell us this earlier?" I asked. Why? I didn't want to scare you guys, if you'd even believe me. I only let you guys trick-or-treat so you wouldn't think anything was unusual. I at least just didn't want you two to see it. That thing's the reason we moved to the city. I wanted to get away." My father took another minute to calm down again. "Look how it has affected me, an adult. How would it have affected you two as children if you knew?" My father refused to discuss this thing any further. I wonder what he exactly saw. if it's still out there. Luke's Spooks. Welcome to Luke's Spooks, Luke said, holding the camera up to the old house in front of him. I just found this awesome new place. Looks haunted, right? Well, we're gonna find out. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Luke held the camera up in front of him as he entered the house. The interior was old, very old. The wallpaper was falling from the walls, and the stairs had collapsed. Luke became concerned about the ceiling falling down and crushing him. Holy shit, dude! This place looks like it's gonna fall down any minute. Let's wrap this up quick, shall we? Luke said, as he moved the camera around the walls and ceiling. Luke pulled the spirit box out from his bag and started it up. The sound of static permeated the air. He placed the camera on a tripod and stepped in front of it. Is there anybody here who would like to communicate? Luke said, with a tone that suggested he had done this many times before. Carnival music started to play through the spirit box. Luke's heart was beating like a drum now, sweat dripping down his forehead. Okay, that is weird, Luke said, looking at the camera. He regained his composure and continued on. Would anybody like to speak to me? A deep, raspy voice replied through the spirit box. Release me. Luke was unnerved by the reply. He paused for a moment before continuing. Are you trapped? Tell me, how can I help you? Luke said nervously. The voice replied, Under the sink. Release me. Luke grabbed the camera and moved into the kitchen. When he checked under the sink, there was a wooden box, sealed with red wax. Well, this is weird, Luke said as he held the box in his left hand, as his right recorded. Luke sat the camera down on the kitchen counter. He pulled his Swiss Army knife from his pocket. Let's see what's inside this box. Man, this is scary, Luke said, as his heart beat audibly in his ears. He began scraping the wax off. It took a bit of effort, but eventually he broke through the seal. Suddenly, the spirit box in the other room began to play carnival music again. This time it was louder than before. Luke felt the fear inside him growing stronger. He fiddled with the box as the carnival music blared, and when he opened it, the music stopped. Then the air became still around him, and his breath became icy, and the shadows behind him began to dance. The box contained a mirror that was cracked and a lock of blonde hair. Luke's eyes were so glued to the contents of the box that he didn't see the shadows behind him, taking the shape of a being. Luke screamed. Then the camera turned to static, and through the static came carnival music. Thank you so much for joining me. You can also find me on Instagram at duchessof.darkness or Twitter at duchessofdark N2. Also, please send me your stories or poems to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. Until next time.